We are in the grip of a fourth COVID pandemic wave, and the city of Cape Town's homeless are feeling under the weather in more ways than one.
Wicked, man, this is wicked. Right behind that waterfall, right outside of my tent, there's two guys sleeping there, and you can see how they got it kind of covered. The guy right at the bottom, he's an old guy, and yeah, this is what you call social development.
This is Kulimborg 1. Located under a bridge in Cape Town, it serves as one of 3 safe spaces for the city's growing destitute and homeless population. The other 2 are Kulimborg 2 nearby and Paint City further north in Bellville.
The safe spaces started in 2018. At that stage, the specifications for what we'd like to achieve at the safe space was put together. We know that we're not going to solve homelessness by simply putting homeless people into a shelter overnight and allowing them then to go and scuttle across the city wherever they may find themselves without connecting them to appropriate social development support programs.
And I mean, if you look at street-based people, this is predominantly, they come from trauma, they come from mental health disorders, they have substance use disorder issues. And so your clinical tools in terms of assessment and intake need to be very specific in terms of how to treat them appropriately.
The city of Cape Town from the very beginning said we want to do more with our money. We want a sustainable option for our homeless people, and so the safe spaces is the route that we went.
So who is the recipient of the millions coughed up by the city's ratepayers to provide shelter for the homeless? In order to understand, we need to recap a previous episode. On the 15th of June 2020, a company called Matdoc won a 3-year tender for Kulimborg 1 for 25 million rand. It had been managing this space since 2018 for over 2 million rand. In November 2020, the same company won another 25 million rand tender at the Paint City Safe Space. This was at the height of an investigation into severe human rights violations at Paint City.
We contacted the Hawks, and had a meeting with the Hawks, and they said this is much higher than the Hawks, because of the amount of money involved.
So who is Matdoc, and how did it earn such lucrative funding? It actually started out as a mattress doctor, but has been outsourcing everything from bedding to solar heating to safety nets for the poor. It says it has been involved in home care since 2012 through the Department of Social Development, but it is not an accredited service provider. Yet, it insists it is qualified for the job.
We do various soft skills programs involved. There's the life skills, and there's also soft skills like conflict resolution, forgiveness, and those sort of things. Then we also got 2 social workers on site. It does psychosocial counseling throughout.
They did not have the specialized knowledge and experience on how to deal with street-based communities.
They have absolutely no qualifications. What we did, because we wanted to find out how did they manage to get these contracts. After all, organizations like MES, U-Turn, Youth Solutions, Ubuntu, all applied, and they didn't get it. Yet this unknown organization got it. So I couldn't understand why the city...
Formerly homeless himself, human rights activist Carlos Mesquita is at the forefront of getting to the truth.
It all has to do with tenders. They don't care whether it's about homeless people, etc. It's about that tender and who's getting that tender.
The city has provided an ultimatum in the form of an amended streets bylaw. Either accept a shelter or a safe space or face a hefty fine. Already this year, despite the COVID disaster management laws which prohibited evictions during the lockdown, Several street-based communities in Greenpoint and District 6, among others, have had their tents demolished and belongings confiscated. They are fighting their evictions in the Cape High Court. But while some court outcomes are pending, the city has appealed other court findings that ruled against the evictions.
We was in court over for that, to say they can't break our places down, but they're still doing it. We know they're doing their job, you understand now, because they also have families they must feed, but they have to respect us also, because we also have families that we have to feed.
We did our research and we found that these bylaws actually have its origin in the colonial and apartheid eras. These laws made it a crime to be without a fixed place of abode. So you'll see the resemblances in the current day streets bylaw, which expressly criminalizes behaviors of people who don't have that recognized abode.
The bylaw does not criminalize homelessness, full stop. Let's not forget everything that happens before then. Our social development street people team have at least 6 engagements with homeless communities, with homeless individuals, long before our uniformed officials come into play here.
Judging from the conditions at safe spaces like Kulimborg 1, some street dwellers wouldn't be blamed for feeling better off on the streets they are prohibited from occupying.
I agree with you 100%. It's, my opinion, not adequate to have homeless people remain under what I call the aftakis. And so the work that we've done at Pain City, you know that they're now in an olfactory environment with a decent roof over their head, access to decent ablution facilities.
But since September 2020, the company has been embroiled in a scandal over allegations and evidence of human rights abuses, especially against female clients.
I've been asked to become a human rights monitor, especially when it came to shelters, etc. And so I was asked to go into Pain City because there were accusations of ladies being strip searched whilst they were having their menstrual periods, etc. And the day we walked in there was a cage where people that were coming back intoxicated or slightly under the weather were given the alternative, either leave the shelter or you go into the cage. Now the cage you go into, come rain or come shine, no food, and that's your punishment for coming back intoxicated.
Don't get food or water in the cage.
They have no access to toilets or anything.
They must do it just there in the cage. They're traumatized. They just go to bed because some of them is still wet in their clothes, and so they're traumatized. But rules is rules. You're not allowed in. You must only come in the morning.
And since September this year, another Paint City scandal has erupted, further tarnishing the reputation of this shelter as a place of safety, not only for its homeless clients, but for its employees as well. Growing up with her twin sister and family in the rural village of Wuppertal in the Cederberg, Lisanne Ferraro had a dream to help those less fortunate than herself.
And ever since the time as I was traveling, I told my friends, like, when I walk in with my first salary, I'm gonna buy each 3 people a blanket. A blanket, and that's why I took this job as ek het dit gevat as 'n passie, nie vir die geld of enigiets anders nie, as my passie.
But she never imagined she would become a victim of abuse herself. In 2019, the 28-year-old single parent began working for MacDoc. In April 2021, she was the victim of an alleged attempted rape. The alleged crime did not take place at Paint City. It took place after the safe space celebrated its first anniversary.
So we had a function there, and afterwards I go with my colleague to his house, and he and his girlfriend's house, and in the night I was feeling he's touching me, and so because I slept in the main bedroom and he and his girlfriend in the other room, and like said to him, I swear to him and tell him to leave the room.
She laid charges at Belleville Police Station. The suspect, Mr. Theo Lotter, has already appeared in the Belleville court, and the case has been postponed to February 2022. Lotter had been a client at Paint City, but became the company driver. Lotter and his girlfriend did not respond to Special Assignment's requests for comment. But what makes this incident particularly disturbing is not only the alleged crime, but the alleged response of Matdock management. The case hit the media in September 2021, while human rights monitors were still demanding the findings of an investigation into human rights abuses dating back to September 2020.
When they saw that she was going to continue with the case and Theo had appeared in court, etc., and obviously there was other media interest and other people inquiring about how could the city have appointed a service provider that's first of all not accredited.
Zona Morton is a human rights monitor who was among several activists and organisations called into Paint City over the alleged human rights violations.
It's enshrined in our constitution that people need to be treated with dignity and respect.
In September, Ferraro was suspended for gross misconduct and brought before a disciplinary hearing before being dismissed on the 5th of November. The lawyers for Matdock boss, Wilfred Fredericks, state that Ferraro allowed a client to body search another client in her presence and did nothing about it, and was therefore dismissed for gross misconduct.
I was smoking outside the company, the building, and that's where I heard one of my clients is calling me. And as I walked in, I saw a male security in the female toilets. And I went in and I told the male security to call the female security, and he couldn't find one. So I took those two clients and I took them to the office.
One client was using the toilet, and she heard a lighter flip, and she looked underneath, and she saw what she thought was drugs. So she just started searching, and then the male security guard obviously heard the commotion in the toilets, and he went in.
Thus, one client she was crying because a male security pushed the door open where she was sitting on the toilet bowl. But that night, complained about me or anything.
So she took both of them to the office and called Wilfred.
But in the site manager, I called everyone that night.
That's when they started coercing and applying pressure on the victim of the strip searching that evening to write a complaint, a grievance against Lizanne.
The 16th of September, she wrote on a report that was saying the other client that she was struck shots by one of the other client, and I was there, but I didn't do anything.
The client subsequently laid a complaint at Belleville Police Station, but she later wrote a letter of retraction, which has been authenticated, in which she says she was coerced by Fredericks to lay the complaint. Matdock has denied this, but residents at Paint City have come forward in support of Ferraro's version. They allege a campaign to silence her because she was determined to press ahead with the case of attempted rape and also because she had witnessed abuses about which she was determined to speak out.
She's obviously an honest and a decent person, and I know I've worked for companies when you like that, they just can't have you around because you know too much.
We just get orders and we must do it from the manager or Wilfred or so. We must just do what they told us to do, tell us to do.
And prior to her final hearing, Farrar was called to a meeting by Fredericks. She states his girlfriend and his sister were present at the meeting.
It was the 21st of October. He said he don't trust me with his company, and I must resign. Then he's gonna give me my full salary and with a 500 rand bonus.
If you wanted to make it easier for her to resign, you would know that if she resigns, she won't be able to claim UIF number one.
I get form because I'm not going to resign. I'm not going to resign. And and as I was at home, I sent him an email. He must send me the offer. I want the offer on black and white. He must please email the offer for me. So he replied with another email and said, no, die antwoord is van die tafel af.
Why did you want the offer in writing?
I can have proof, because who's gonna believe me?
On the 14th of December 2021, Lisanne Farrar began her battle at the CCMA against MacDoc for unfair dismissal. MacDoc boss, Wilfred Fredericks, sent along another representative.
She was so confused. She didn't even know why I've been dismissed or couldn't say anything. Or if I can go back to work or even negotiate. The commissioner said something about arbitration. So both me and MacDoc is gonna go to court.
But this is just the beginning of a long, protracted battle.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Now I'm dismissed. I have a son to raise. I have people in Wuppertal. And I have rent to pay here where I'm staying. If I pick up now and leave for Wuppertal, there is no work.
And meanwhile, human rights groups still await the findings of that investigation into gross human rights abuses by a service provider allegedly unfit to take care of the city's most vulnerable.
They had no intention of suspending MacDoc. And thus also the reason why when we asked for a forensic investigation, they decided to do an internal investigation. And we were promised that report for many months. And now they're saying, but we can't get the report because it was an internal investigation.
That investigation process has since concluded in terms of then needing to make sure that from a contractual perspective, we manage our contract more effectively.
And the response that you got was, the management was changed and they immediately reacted. They immediately reacted by giving them another contract and extending their contract for 3 years.
The Department of Social Development in the Western Cape also seems to have dissociated itself from the matter.
We were told that the content of our letter, with 7 allegations and 7 proposed solutions, was discussed with the minister, and that the Provincial Department of Social Development does not have the authority to intervene in the matter.
The Western Cape Department of Social Development did not respond to Special Assignment's requests for an interview.
There is nothing legislating or governing the provision of services to these vulnerable key population groups. They're wiping their hands.
MatDoc is also not an accredited service provider with the city.
And also the fact that it's named a shelter. So it's a loophole that they use so they can appoint any Tom, Dick or Harry and just to work with a group of people and like it's a piece of refuse.
MatDoc also bid for the tender for Culemborg too, but was beaten by a company called Take Note Trading, an obscure entity supposedly specializing in catering, events management, and, as we showed you in a previous program, like MatDoc, an enthusiastic bidder for slices of the city's lucrative tender pies.
That they use the word shelter. It's up to a certain amount of money. Certain boxes don't have to be ticked.
In a response to my question as to why Take Note Trading had actually won the tender, the city praised its BEE scoring and other attributes, but it refused to provide further details on the company directors or its history. Shelf or shell companies are legal special purpose entities unless they are used as fronts for tax evasion or money laundering or as a backdoor to disguise traceability of ownership.
This is typical of a nice front door, but once you open it, you just walk into a absolute heap of dirt.
So I decided to follow the trail of Take Note Trading myself. The sole director is Mr. Imran Yaqub, but there are 2 registered addresses for Take Note Trading. The first is at N1 City, but the now defunct Take Note Trading address belongs to a doctor who has been there for years. He directed me to a company that actually did the shelf company registration for Take Note Trading.
He's the sole member, which means he runs and owns the company.
Right.
That is their address.
Right.
Postal and physical. And you can see when we sold them the company, they did a member change from our shelf company to him, and they did a change of address as well. See, 2009.
I then drove to a beautifully manicured residential part of Rondebosch East and found the current address of Take Note Trading, but there is no sign of any company activity. And the managing director of Take Note Trading, Mr. Yaqub, was not at home. He has not responded to our requests for an interview. So who should be held accountable?
So there's a lot of individuals that should be held accountable. But I would say the portfolio that looks after social development.
Have we delivered reasonable services to increase our offer to the homeless community? Absolutely, we have done so. Have we done the best job that we can? We will never do the best job that we can because we can always do better.
But allegedly corrupt tenders are enabled by lack of oversight, indifference, and contempt towards the most marginalized of people who are living here.